All right, good afternoon. First things first, I have a trip announcement for you. Just later this afternoon, early this evening rather, the Secretary General will be heading off to India, where he will take part in an event on India and UN partnership. He will also participate in the launch of the Lifestyle for Environment mission. During his two-day visit, the Secretary General will meet with Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, as well as the External Affairs Minister of India, Jaishankar. He will also visit a model project site which has recently been declared India's first solar-powered village. At the site, the Secretary General will witness how solar rooftops installed on more than 1,300 rural houses are improving lives in community. The Secretary General will then head off to Vietnam, where he will take part in a ceremony to commemorate the 45th anniversary of Vietnam's membership to the United Nations. While there, he will meet with the General Secretary of the Communist Party, Nguyen Phu Trong, the State President, Nguyen Xuan Phuc, and the Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh, as well as other senior Vietnamese officials. The Secretary General will also participate in a dialogue with Vietnamese youth. He will be back in New York on the 23rd of this month. As we will have a bit formal, I expect a more formal statement a bit later today, but I can already, unfortunately, share with you some more tragic news from Mali, where 3 United Nations peacekeepers died today when their vehicle hit an improvised explosive device in Tessalit in the Kidal region of Mali. The peacekeepers were on a mine search and detection patrol. 3 other peacekeepers were also seriously injured and are receiving treatment in a UN hospital. We send our deepest condolences to the families of the peacekeepers, to our colleagues in the mission, and we wish a speedy recovery to those who were injured. Just to give you some context, this is obviously the latest incident in what is already a very challenging environment for UN peacekeeping. This year, already 12 UN peacekeepers were killed in Mali in hostile acts. I know a number of you have been asking me for updates on the Black Sea grain initiatives and related issues following the just concluded trip to Moscow by Rebecca Greenspan, the Secretary General of the UN Office, the UN Conference for Trade and Development, as well as Martin Griffiths, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs. They were in Moscow on the 16th and 17th of October. They just left about an hour or so ago. They were there where negotiations are continuing with senior Russian officials to convey the UN Secretary General's commitment to pursuing an extended and expanded Black Sea grain initiative. Both UN officials met yesterday and today jointly with Sergei Vershinin, the Deputy Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation. Ms. Greenspan also had positive and constructive discussions with the first Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, Andrei Belousov, and that was on facilitating unimpeded exports of Russian grain and fertilizer to global markets, relaying the commitments to continue progress with all parties involved in that front in order to address growing global food insecurity. Mr. Griffiths also met with the Russian Deputy Minister of Defense, Alexander Fomin, to discuss a more effective implementation of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Discussions will continue. Fertilizers and raw materials required to produce fertilizers, that includes ammonia, originating from the Russian Federation, are key to worldwide agricultural production. We are concerned about the next harvest and crisis in the making if fertilizers are not made available quickly and at a reasonable prices to farmers all over the world as the sowing season begins. A crisis of affordability can become a crisis of availability. On the events that we saw in Ukraine proper earlier today, I can tell you that the Secretary General is deeply disturbed by the continuing missile and drone attacks against Ukrainian cities and towns. That includes the capital, Kyiv. These strikes have resulted in widespread damage to residential and civilian areas, including critical energy infrastructure, and have caused numerous deaths and injuries. The Secretary General calls for the attacks to immediately cease and for urgent de-escalation. On the ground, our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that the drone attacks in Kyiv and other locations across the country reportedly caused more than 60 civilian casualties and infrastructure damage between the 14th of October and today. This morning, several residential homes were reportedly damaged in Kyiv. That's according to the Kyiv City Administration and our own humanitarian security reports. In the city of Mykolaiv in the south, drones caused fires that damaged warehouses containing sunflower oil and pharmaceuticals, and that's according to the mayor and the reports our humanitarian colleagues are receiving. Missile attacks in central and northern Ukraine have disrupted power supplies, while similar attacks on energy infrastructure facilities in the center and in the north of the country reportedly disrupted power supplies for hundreds of towns and villages. We continue to respond to people impacted by the ongoing crisis. Since the 24th of February, we, along with our humanitarian partners, have reached 13.4 million people across Ukraine. Here, and just to flag that here in New York, tomorrow, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is hosting a briefing on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine. That will be done by Denise Brown. Representatives of the Ukrainian government and partners will also take part. The event starts at 10 a.m. You'll be able to follow it on Web TV. And we've also asked Denise Brown to come here and brief you because she's here in person this week, and that'll happen at some point during the week. And also, just for the record, want to flag that we issued a statement late Friday in which the Secretary General reiterated his appeal to the Russian Federation that the International Committee for the Red Cross be granted full access to all prisoners of war in accordance with international law. The Secretary General spoke to you extensively on Ethiopia at the stakeout just a few minutes ago. I won't repeat what he said, but his remarks in the Q&A will be shared with you shortly. Humanitarian update on Haiti. As of Saturday, that's the 15th of October, the Ministry of Health had confirmed 66 cases of cholera, reported 564 suspected cases, and 22 cholera-related deaths. Most of the suspected cases have been recorded in Port-au-Prince, the general area of Port-au-Prince, but there are also cases in the center, Nip, and Artibonite departments. Cases at the Port-au-Prince prison are counted separately. According to the authorities, there are 271 cases there, 12 confirmed, and 14 deaths. In response to the situation, humanitarian agencies have been visiting and scaling up support to cholera treatment centers managed by NGOs. At the center, as the Secretary General said a few minutes ago, clean drinking water, indispensable in the fight to contain the cholera outbreak, remains in short supply. The chlorination of water reservoirs of Haiti's National Directorate of Drinking Water and Sanitation and its multiple supply points in Port-au-Prince remains insufficient. We also remain very concerned about the fuel situation. As of today, some hospitals have reported they cannot perform required surgeries due to lack of fuel. For example, in Canapé Vert and Bernard Mev's hospitals in Port-au-Prince have now been forced to reduce some of their health services. The Pan American Health Organization, for its part, has launched an emergency appeal for nearly $13 million to respond to the cholera outbreak. And as you know, Haiti's on the agenda of the Security Council this afternoon. Helen Lalim, the head of our mission there, will brief remotely from Haiti. We have asked for her remarks. If we get them, we will share them ahead of time with you. Earlier today, the Secretary General met with the resident coordinators who, as you well know, represent him on the ground and lead our work on implementing the Sustainable Development Goals and advancing them. In his remarks, the Secretary General warned of yet another difficult year ahead and said resident coordinators should continue their work to rally the full strength of the UN development system to forge partnerships and innovations, to find solutions, including financing for the Sustainable Development Goals, focused on the cost of living crisis, social cohesion, climate change, and development outcomes that advance human rights and inclusion will be key to rescuing the SDGs, he underscored. And a note that this is first time since COVID-19 that the Secretary General has been able to meet with his representatives in person. Geir Pedersen, our good friend, Special Envoy for Syria, met in Damascus today with the Foreign Minister of Syria, Faisal Mekdad. He told reporters afterwards that the situation there continues to be extremely difficult. He said the UN will continue to work to try to see if there's a possibility for a nationwide ceasefire, as well as the humanitarian needs for the Syrian people and all refugees, adding that we really need is progress on the political front. Once again emphasized his ideas for a step-by-step approach, the importance for all parties to engage in that and the need to move forward. The transcript of his remarks was shared with you. Just for the record, you will have seen that over the weekend we welcomed the signing that took place on October 13th of the Declaration of Algiers by 14 Palestinian factions as a positive step towards intra-Palestinian reconciliation. That statement was shared with you. We also issued a statement expressing the Secretary General's condolences following the tragic mine accident that took place in Turkey. Our friends in Nairobi at the UN Environment Programme today released a report which says plastics are accumulating in the world's soil at a worrying rate. The report found that plastics used extensively in farming, from plastic-coated fertilizers to mulch film, didn't know what the word mulch film, are contaminating the soil and potentially threatening security. Microplastics are also impacting human health when transferred to people through the food chain. Some countries have banned plastics microspheres, but many other microplastics continue to enter the water system. These include everything from cigarette filters to tire components to synthetic fibers from clothes. UNEP is calling on countries to develop targeted solutions for stopping the flow of plastics from the source into the environment. Couple of football-related note. That's European football. You will recall that a while ago we told you about our Football for the Goals initiative, which provides platform to mobilize the global football community to champion actions around achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, just a little more than 3 months after its launch, the initiative has reached a milestone with the Asian Football Confederation joining as its 50th member. The Asia Confederation, which represents 47 countries across Asia, is the third of the 6 continental football confederations to join the initiative, along the South American Football Confederation and and UEFA, the Union of European Football Associations. In addition, to the federations, which represent 112 countries, members include national associations, leagues, clubs, foundations, NGOs, and the private sector. More information on the interweb. Today is the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. In a message, the Secretary General notes that as we mark the day, we face the harsh truth: the world is moving backwards. Secretary General pointed out that COVID-19 plunged millions into poverty, inequalities are widening, and national households' economies are battered by job losses, skyrocketing food and energy prices, and the gathering of shadows at a global recession. At the same time, he adds, climate crisis and raging conflicts are causing immense suffering, with the poorest people bearing the brunt. Also on poverty, our friends at the UN Development Programme launched today, and Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative today released their new Multidimensional Poverty Index. It shows that reducing poverty at scale is possible and unveils a new poverty profiles that can offer breakthrough in development efforts to tackle the interlinked aspects of poverty. Even before the pandemic and the current cost of living crisis are accounted for, the report shows that 1.2 billion men, women, and children in 111 developing countries are living in acute multidimensional poverty. This is nearly double the number seen as poor when poverty is defined as living on less than $1.90 a day. James.
Can I start by asking about your statement on the Black Sea Grain Initiative? The statement describes one meeting that Ms. Greenspan had with the Russian First Deputy Prime Minister as positive and constructive. There's no mention of how the meeting with the Deputy Foreign Minister, but you've had 2 meetings, it seems, yesterday and today with the Deputy Foreign Minister, so it assumes there's some sort of negotiation going on with him. How did that meeting go, and are you getting a commitment to sign back up to the grain initiative, or at least an indication that that is the way it's going?
I think we can qualify all of the discussions as positive and constructive. Obviously, all of this is a complex effort, and as soon as we have more to announce, we shall.
Okay. Can I then ask you about staying in Ukraine, about the drone attacks on Kyiv? What is the Secretary General's view of the use of this particular weapon? What is his view on the fact that it's supplied by Iran? Does he believe that Iran is in breach of international sanctions by supplying such weaponry?
I think on the sanctions issue, that is a decision, a view to be expressed by the Council, which has imposed the sanctions, whether or not these fall under the various Security Council resolutions. This is sadly not the first time we've seen drones used in warfare since someone thought to use drones as a weapon of war. And we've seen it in many, many conflicts, increasingly. I think tragically it lowers the cost of imposing suffering, of causing suffering on people. And as I said, we've seen this conflict, but we've seen it in many other conflicts.
One last one, if I can, staying on Iran. The protests continue in Iran. We're seeing continued repression, particularly targeting women and girls. We saw a fire at the major prison that houses political detainees in Tehran. What is the Secretary General's reaction to this? Because we listen to his statements every day and we get used to the language you use. And so far, the language you've used with regard to Iran and what's been going on there has been somewhat muted.
I mean, that's an assessment I don't particularly agree with. I mean, I think it's an assessment we don't particularly agree with. I think on Thursday. It already feels like Friday. On Thursday, we were very clear about his concern about the rising number of casualties, and I think he was very clear, and we've been very clear on urging the authorities to engage with the people expressing their legitimate grievances, including on the issue relating to women's rights. Deji, and then I'll come back to you.
First, a quick follow-up on the attack of the peacekeepers on Mali. Do you know the nationality of those peacekeepers?
We do know the nationalities. We're still waiting for the confirmation that next of kin have been notified. So if you'll indulge in giving us a bit of time on that.
Okay, so some questions on Haiti, because we hear what the Secretary General said and his answer to some of the questions. One of them is he talked about the possibility of multinational force there to help the humanitarian aid. But it seems it's not the request that from the government of Haiti, because they asked for first humanitarian aid and second to help restore security. Would that be a problem? I mean,
nothing can happen against the will of a sovereign government when it comes to Haiti. So what the Secretary General has done, he's laid out in the letter, which is being discussed today, various options on how to best support the government, support the national police in a sense, and also deliver humanitarian goods. It's challenging, if not impossible, for us and other humanitarian partners to deliver goods in these conditions. The fact that the fuel depot at Vahur is still blocked, I mean, I've said pretty clearly, no fuel, no surgery, right? And no fuel, no delivery of aid. It's pretty basic. We understand that a number of member states are engaged in discussions with the Haitian authorities, and we hope that they will find a path forward that will bring solace to the people of Haiti.
But we also saw the reports that some of the civilians in Haiti, they don't really want foreign military forces to be there. Would that make this, if there's a possible, UN-led force
well,
there, would that be risky?
let me, if I may interrupt, we're not talking about a UN-led force, and I think the Secretary General has been very clear in his report about this would not be a UN operation, for all sorts of reasons. Obviously, it will. Whatever happens has to be designed that it improves the situation, whether it's security, humanitarian, or political.
One last question on the remarks by the special envoy of Syria. Mr. Peterson said when answering questions, he said that we need to now to see that we start slowly but steadily to implement the different provisions of the Security Council resolution, which he believes the resolution hasn't been implemented quite well. Does the Secretary General think there might be a need to, let's say, adjust that Security Council resolution? I believe it's 2254.
Not particularly. I mean, I think we have many resolutions on Syria, right? We know what the goal is. We just need to ensure that all the parties are engaged in making progress. Yep.
Thank you, with the BBC. I just wanted to see if Secretary General would consider talking about the issue, the situation in Iran a little bit more, given what happened over the weekend in the jail. This has been now developed into a number of prisoners killed, and the stories that the state media and the officials have put out, disproven by the interviews we've done with people who were inside the facility, including the fact that some of these prisoners were trying to come out and protest in help of other prisoners, and then tear gas was thrown inside the jail on top of these prisoners. Some were shot, and initially they said 4 people were killed, and now they're saying 8 people are killed, and the number keeps growing. A lot of families were outside of Evin prison, very worried about their loved ones. They were fired at. So the situation, apart from all of that's been going on in the last 4 weeks, is unique in that these people were arrested, hundreds were arrested during this protest, and then were in the custody of this regime, and then they're being fired on inside the jail. It seems like a whole
I
other
think
level of...
the situation in the jail is particularly concerning, given that we don't have all the information. And I think it is incumbent that there is an investigation into what happened, an investigation that is transparent, so that we can learn what happened. People who are in detention have certain rights as established through international law and human rights mechanism, and those need to be respected. Madame.
Hi, Steph. Just a quick follow-up on Iran. So there is an information from yesterday that not only drones, but they are supposed to sell new rockets to Russia. Is there any preventive measures of UN from that, considering the fact that probably the deal will happen like in a day?
Sorry, see if you could start again. Sorry, because somebody was texting me at the same time. So
hello,
too much
I'm
stuff.
Natalie from Ukraine.
Yes.
So Stéphane, yes, just
you caught me out. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just copying. So a quick follow-up, Stéphane. Yeah.
Yeah. Focusing. Yeah.
Yes. So on Iran, that not only drones, but they're supposed to sell also to Russia new rockets, and the deal should happen like in recent days. What the other preventive measures UN could do? And another question is about the nuclear weapon trainings in Barents of Sea by Russia. I know it's planned, but in these circumstances, in the case of Russian aggression against Ukraine, is there any other statements of Secretary General?
I think on the exercises, as you said, I'm not having any comment on things that have yet to happen. I think in broader terms, the Secretary General has expressed himself, I think, very clearly and directly on issues having to do with nuclear warfare. We're seeing reports. We have no first-hand reports of various weapons deals. We have no particular comment except to say that would reiterate what the Secretary General said, is that he wants to see a de-escalation in this conflict. It is important that we focus on how to move the conflict in a direction of de-escalation as opposed to escalation.
And just a quick question about the meeting of the ambassadors of the UN mission in Moscow. You said what what Russian thinks about that, but what is Ukrainian position? Are they going to speak with the Ukraine about that Russia would like to send their fertilizer?
We remain in constant touch with Ukrainian officials, both the Secretary General, as Martin Griffiths does as well. This is, the Black Sea Grain Initiative brings together the United Nations, Russia, and Ukraine. So obviously, this involves a dialogue with both Ukraine and Russia on our for our part.
Details.
Nothing to share with you, Monsieur.
Thank you, Stéphane. The UN Refugee Agency, in a statement, said that it was deeply distressed by the shocking images of 92 people who were reported to have been found at the Greek-Turkish land border, stripped of their clothes. They were rescued by the Greek police. I was wondering if you have anything further on the incident. Is the Secretary General aware? I also understand there is a meeting coming up between the Greek Minister of Migration and Asylum Policy with the UNGA President on October 24th.
Okay, on the J president, you should ask Polya. He's very much aware and I think shares UNHCR's distress. No human being should ever be treated in this manner, especially people who are, whether they're refugees or migrants. UNHCR tells us they have not yet had access to the 92 people. Our understanding is that they are being moved to a reception and identification center by the Greek authorities, and UNHCR very much hopes to speak to them to get a first-hand account of what happened. Ephraim.
Thank you, Steph. Follow up on Iran. What mechanisms, UN mechanisms, are now activated to deal with the situation in Iran? Who's investigating the violations that are taking place? Who's compiling evidence? How is the UN engaged?
Well, there are human rights. There are human rights mechanism, and I can tell you, obviously, for his part, the Secretary General and his advisors continue to follow the situation extremely carefully.
Okay. Quick question on Syria as well. Any update on cholera outbreak in Syria?
No, I was hoping to get a humanitarian update, but that'll probably be mañana, tomorrow. Okay. Iftikhar, I think you have a question.
Thank you, Steph. About the Secretary General's upcoming visit to India, will he be discussing with Indian leaders the deteriorating situation in occupied Kashmir, and also raise with them the ongoing persecution of Muslims in India?
Well, the Secretary General will obviously meet, as I mentioned, with both the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign External Relations. If I can ask you, Iftikhar, to bear with me and wait for a readout of what has actually been discussed, and then we can talk about what's been said instead of saying what may be said. Thank you all. Paulina briefed already, right? Okay, then you are dismissed for now.